move through to website architecture. So looking first and foremost at proposition or service-led approach. So proposition is more company-centric. It's quality or value focused. We're looking at a unique value proposition, whereas a product or service-led approach may be a core focus on products, higher search volumes, increased buyer intent, and more lead sales focused as well. So if we move through again to what approach we should take. So a product or service-led approach will attract or appeal to a different audience than a proposition approach. So the users will have different motivation and intentions there. In many cases, the product or service specific copy will appeal to prospects starting their search. But once they know they want a specific product or service, their search focus may shift to other factors about the business, which is when the proposition becomes more important. So there's a place for both service and product proposition focus to help convert potential customers. Ultimately, here you're attracting people through a service or product-led approach, but then what's helping convert it is that proposition, because that's when they can affiliate themselves with the business itself. So ultimately, the site structure needs more focus towards the product and service to help initially capture the interest. Once that interest is captured, the brand needs to push the proposition, or the proposition needs to be present to the potential customers so they choose your product or service over another competitor or another company. So what we've done here is we've looked at how Unrivaled have structured their sitemap. So looking at the sitemap and how that is structured to say what is service, what is proposition focused. And we have essentially gone with a service-led approach, but the proposition also helps supplement this. So we have our services, our work, which talks about the service that we've done, of the different services that we've done or have. And then the homepage is sort of split across the two there, because we talk about our proposition, but we also talk about some of the services. So that page works in tandem to help support both areas. And then we have the proposition focused area, which is more about us, our industry, our people, our viewpoints on stuff. So our sort of thought leadership around that area, why you would want to work with us, why they think we know our stuff essentially. But we start off with the services as a service-led approach. So it's a good viewpoint there of how we sort of structure it and how to supplement that service-led approach with a proposition focus as well. So next, I'm just going to hand over to George, and he's going to talk to you in a little bit more detail here around consolidating domains and subdomains.
Cool, thank you, Greg. Yeah, so as Greg said there, I'm just going to talk through some of our key sort of strategies and key initiatives around consolidating domains and structuring domains. So one question we're asked all the time is around the subdomains and versus consolidate domains. And the way we look at them is that separate domains and separate subdomains are treated entirely separate entities from your core domain, your core platform. Even if they contain like links and logos to your main site, if they share the same visuals, same branding, they are still treated as separate entities entirely, as they are separate platforms, separate domains. This is the same with subdomains. Again, they're all treated as separate entities in their own right, with their own backlink profiles, and they don't share the same ranking abilities and ranking keywords and backlink profiles as the wider domain that they're sat on. For example, a subdomain.unrivaled.com. There is instances where separate domains are a viable tactic. The example I always talk about is JD Sports. They're a wider business group, and they're within their group, they have lots of separate websites like JD Sports, Size, Foot Patrol, Go Outdoors. This is a case where you would need separate sites because they have their separate entities, their separate businesses, they have their own search volumes in their own right. their own, search intent, people looking for them brands specifically. So it wouldn't make sense to consolidate those. But in most cases, when we think about subdomains and separate websites, we go down the strategy of using consolidated domains. So we would look, as part of our projects, when we're think about website architecture and our best approach and what's going to be best for future growth as well, is consolidation. There's a number of sort of pros we see to consolidating domains. One, I think, is very much overlooked, is around time efficiencies and budget efficiencies, because you're having to manage one website instead of 6 or 7, for example, if you have lots of separate sub-brands. The removal of duplicate content, again, because you're bringing content together, you're bringing sites together. That's a good opportunity, as Greg said, to go through your content and make sure that it's fresh, it's clean, it's not competing with each other, which is something I'll talk about later on as well. Usually we also see an increase in organic traffic when we consolidate domains, primarily because when we merge websites together, we're also merging the backlink profiles as well, which, as we all know, is one of the key a key ranking factor. So ordinarily, when we do consolidation pieces, we also see an increase in organic traffic as well, subsequently from that. This is also sort of our main approach when we also tackle multilingual websites as well. So it's important to assess sort of each project and each case individually, but usually consolidation is our main approach when we come to multilingual and international projects as well. We feel, and we've seen the results from this, that a TLD, so top level domain, split into subfolders based on the language and location. When you use the correct hreflang and content language tags and optimized content and international targeting within Google Search Console, that is just as effective, it's just as targeted as a country level. So a cctld is like a .co.uk or a .de, and it has sort of numerous other benefits, as with consolidating the subdomains and several websites, as we talked about before as well. So again, the time and budget efficiencies that you get from merging separate language websites into the same instance, the same platform. It's easier to implement multilingual targeting if you merge all sites together, because it's on a single platform, so you can use the platform's own capabilities to do that rather than having to set up on multiple different sites. Again, increased website authority, because again, you're merging backlink profiles together, so it's sharing that ranking ability, which then subsequently we normally see an increase in traffic as well. But there is some cons to this, as there is with any sort of migrations and any consolidation pieces. So the initial time it takes to put it together is costly. So it's a lot of groundwork that goes into consolidations, just through the sheer number of 301 redirecting to do, and making all the checks that Greg went through on his previous slides. And there's also not really a con, but there's also a real need to make sure you have a very clear strategy, because it's very easy thing to get wrong, especially hreflang. If anyone who's worked in SEO before knows that hreflang is a real headache, and it's very easy to make a mess of. Another aspect of website architecture that I think is often overlooked, especially in the case of large websites, normally e-commerce and retail, is around faceted navigation. Faceted navigation is really good for user experience. It helps people to really drill down very easily to content they need. But it also gives us really good opportunities from a SEO and wider performance marketing perspective around creating key category pages and subcategories based on the navigation as well. So there's multiple ways you can do this. One, you could break down your navigation into individual pieces, do keyword research around each one. If there's enough sort of distinct enough search volume and distinct enough brand search intent behind each piece in your navigation, you could build out HTML landing pages using static URLs for faceted navigation. So that's, again, really good opportunities to get those ranking in organic search. Use them in paid ads, social media, advertising, email marketing as well. There's the example I like to use is JD Sports again, and I've called them out before. They have a really good way of doing this, essentially. It's where they've got very clear landing pages around some of their popular searches, like men's trainers is a distinct landing page, as is the brand of Nike Air Max. So when you get further and further down their faceted search, there is individual landing pages for each of these, because they've gone through that process of looking at their search volumes and what people are looking for. Another thing which I like to do personally is to use quite a clear and thorough tracking system, like event tracking system on that faceted search. So rather than having to drill down into keyword research all the time, you could look in analytics and see the popular filters that people are using, and then you can specifically weave them into your content planning, whether that's creation of blog pages, create landing pages. This is also useful for internal search as well. You can use the same data. Now that's Luke's going to touch on that later on. So yeah, faceted search is a really clear opportunity. Not to throw any shade at ASOS, but they in contrast to JD Sports, this is an area where they're not currently using any sort of faceted search optimization. So you can see then in some of the screenshots I've got, they've got just using heavy parameter pages for their internal search currently. Then there's no sort of distinction between what's a category page and what's like a subcategory. So yeah, missing a trick in that book, in my opinion. So I'm just going to move into search intent. So once we've got sort of the architecture and everything sort of in a healthy place, we need to sort of drill down into the search intent and how we're going to map content to intent. So Google and the rest of search engines are really aware of search intent, and they give searchers the best possible results that are going to sort of meet the criteria of why they're searching and why they're using Google search, essentially, or Bing search. So the most important part, I think, of optimizing their website or architecture from a structure perspective is mapping user needs and intent to content. This needs to be taken into consideration as well when we're doing like the metadata, content itself, URLs. We need to make sure that we're correctly mapping intent, whether it's research-based or sort of commercial-based, to different levels of the site, essentially. So it's not just about understanding what people are searching for, but it's understanding why they're searching as well, and making sure that you're structuring your website correctly to meet that. The way I like to think about it is, rather than thinking of your website as one big funnel from research content at the top and then transactional content at the bottom, I think it's a better way to think of it as each of your key content themes or content groups within your navigation is a funnel in itself. So yeah, having a sort of approach of this of thinking you have your large, like, high search volume terms at the top of the funnel, in research informational content, and then you work down the funnel to obviously your lower search volume, high commercial, conversion minded content at the bottom as well. We know that longer tail queries are more likely to result in conversion. It's more like commercially minded, where broader terms have less commercial intent, they're more research based, but they do have more search volume on average, so they're going to drive sort of more content.